Welcome to WEAC's Out of Gas In With Justice press conference. Thanks everyone for joining us this morning. I'd like to note that this event is being recorded. We're going to have 3 speakers followed by a short video. After that, we're going to open it up for Q&A. Please use the Q&A tab at the bottom of your Zoom. And since we'll only be taking questions from the media, please identify yourself by name and your media affiliation, and we'll be pulling the questions after the video. With that, I would like to introduce Peggy Shepard, our Executive Director, co-founder, WEAC Environmental Justice.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Peggy Shepard. I'm the co-founder and Executive Director of WEAC for Environmental Justice. I want to thank all of you for joining us this morning, including our staff, partners, participants, and members of the press. You know, we undertook this pilot to gain a better understanding of the impacts of transitioning from gas stoves to electric induction stoves in affordable housing. Now, it's true that 70% of New York City's greenhouse gas emissions come from burning fossil fuels like gas in our buildings. And reducing that source of emissions would clearly be a big step towards addressing climate justice for our communities. But we see this first and foremost as a public health issue. Air pollution has been linked to adverse health impacts, and we know from numerous studies that low-income communities and communities of color, which we refer to as environmental justice communities, are exposed to disproportionate amounts of outdoor air pollution. Now, Out of Gas In With Justice really looked at the impacts on indoor air pollution when transitioning from gas to induction stoves, which is critical given that we spend approximately 90% of our time indoors. And we conducted this pilot in a NYCHA building in the Bronx, in an environmental justice community, which is plagued by some of the worst air quality in the city. But we are proud to say that this pilot study is the first in the United States to monitor indoor air quality in affordable housing units, transitioning from gas stoves to electric induction stoves with residents in place. And we hope that this study will catalyze future studies and policies that will ensure renters, particularly those who live in affordable housing, ensure that they are a part of the energy transition away from fossil fuels. So this helps the planet, but very, very importantly, this improves public health. So at this time, I want to introduce you to Sonal Jessel, the Director of Policy here at WEAC, who will tell you a little bit more about the work we do in relation to this project, Out of Gas. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. As Peggy noted, 70% of New York City greenhouse gas emissions come from burning fossil fuels like gas in our buildings. This is why we helped pass Local Law 154 here in New York City last year, which requires that all new buildings under 7 stories are constructed in the city to be all electric beginning in January 2024, and those over 7 stories beginning in 2027. Out of Gas In With Justice helped us understand the challenges of transitioning away from gas appliances in existing buildings, especially in affordable housing where disproportionate impacts of both pollution and climate change are the greatest. We have identified a number of policy recommendations based on what we learned from this study. These include adjusting governmental policies and programs so they meet the needs of low-income renters who have limited autonomy over housing conditions, restructuring existing programs to focus on whole home retrofits, and prioritizing low-income housing, and passing policies that will reduce the use of fossil fuels in homes. Detailed recommendations, including proposed legislation, can be found on page 44 of our report. But again, this is about more than climate change. Indoor air pollution from gas appliances is a public health issue. We know that environmental justice communities, like those in the Bronx, have become dumping grounds for all sorts of pollution, particularly air pollution, which has led to the Bronx having some of the highest asthma rates in the country. We recently helped pass New York State law that addresses the cumulative impacts of pollution in these communities, because we know that pollution is cumulative, where air quality is impacted from many sources of air pollution, such as facilities and our homes and our cars. We recently helped, and that's why we need to look at the indoor air pollution from gas appliances and find ways to reduce the impact it has on these vulnerable populations. Now, I would like to introduce you to Annie Carfuro, our Climate Justice Campaigns Coordinator here at WEACT, who led the Out of Gas Inwood Justice Pilot Project.
Hello, everybody. So the Out of Gas Inwood Justice pilot involved 20 apartments in the 96-unit New York City Housing Authority building, 1471 Watson Avenue, in the Hunts Point area of the Bronx. We replaced gas stoves for new induction stoves in 10 apartments, while the other 10 kept their gas stoves and served as a control group. We did long-term monitoring of indoor air quality in all 20 apartments, looking at daily nitrogen dioxide and carbon monoxide concentrations. The control apartments received induction stoves at the culmination of the pilot. We chose to focus on nitrogen dioxide and carbon monoxide because of the particularly troubling health risks associated with prolonged exposure to these two air pollutants. Exposure to nitrogen dioxide can cause damage to the human respiratory tract and increase a person's vulnerability to and severity of respiratory infections and asthma. Asthma specifically is a condition that already inequitably affects Black, Latinx, and low-income children. Exposure to high levels of carbon monoxide can be deadly. However, research has found that even low levels of exposure can exacerbate cardiovascular illnesses. Our study found that by simply removing the gas stove from a home and replacing it with an induction stove, daily nitrogen dioxide concentrations dropped by 35% when controlling for temperature and apartment level factors. In apartments with gas stoves, our monitoring recorded 24-hour nitrogen dioxide levels that exceeded the World Health Organization's 24-hour recommended indoor air quality guidelines. In the United States, the Environmental Protection Agency does not have indoor air quality guidelines. However, we found air quality inside homes with gas stoves exceeded the EPA's 1-hour nitrogen dioxide guidelines for outdoor air quality by 1 hour every day. Meanwhile, in the homes with induction stoves, the 24-hour nitrogen dioxide levels were below WHO guidelines, and homes experienced basically no time where they were above the EPA's 1-hour outdoor guideline. During the same period, 24-hour averages of carbon monoxide for households with gas stoves reached concentrations of 1.4 parts per million, whereas households with induction stoves had a 24-hour average of 0.8 parts per million, a significant decrease. While our air monitoring showed clear improvements to indoor air quality when gas stoves were removed from apartments, there was still interference from other polluting sources, particularly ones that produce nitrogen dioxide. We hypothesized that the basement boiler, cars outside, and gas stoves in other apartments may be interfering with our readings. This led us to conduct what is known as a controlled cooking test to isolate air pollution from the stove specifically. A controlled cooking test is a scientifically valid and repeatable protocol. By cooking the same thing under the same conditions but on different stoves, it allows researchers to compare the air quality impacts between cooking on a gas versus induction stove, while controlling as many of the variables as possible, such as food quantity, recipe, cooking time, and temperature. When cooking a standardized meal on both a gas and induction stove in the NYCHA development, nitrogen dioxide concentrations in the kitchen with gas stoves were on average 190% higher than in kitchens with induction stoves. We found that nitrogen dioxide concentrations increased to an average of 197 parts per billion when using a gas stove. This concentration level is well above the Environmental Protection Agency's outdoor air quality level deemed unhealthy for sensitive groups, which is 100 parts per billion. Meanwhile, nitrogen dioxide concentrations in kitchens with induction stoves remained at an average of 14 parts per billion, similar to background levels of nitrogen dioxide, meaning induction stoves produce no additional nitrogen dioxide besides what was already in the air from other sources. The results of our long-term air monitoring and controlled cooking tests confirmed that removing gas stoves from apartments eliminates exposure to high concentrations of nitrogen dioxide. However, due to the discovery of air pollution from other sources, we believe that doing whole building energy conversions that bundle short-term improvements like stoves with larger retrofit projects will have the greatest impact on indoor air quality and resident health. Our policy recommendations aim to ensure that government programs and policies are targeting dedicated funding and resources for low-income communities to address the unique housing challenges that they face when it comes to building electrification. This includes addressing health and safety concerns, weatherization assistance, utility bill assistance, and more. We have found that current government programs that help buildings electrify are not designed to address the existing conditions that New York's most vulnerable populations live in. Our recommendations will ease existing barriers in order to allow electrification efforts to reach deeper levels of housing affordability. On an important final note, part of the pilot included participant focus groups to assess attitudes and opinions of gas stoves, induction stoves, and the transition process. Participants unanimously loved their new induction stoves, citing reasons that include the ease of cooking, the time saving because an induction stove cooks faster and it's easier to clean, the decreased reliance on other appliances, and the safety they felt from not having to burn gas inside their homes. Not a single participant that received an induction stove asked for their gas stove back at the end of the study. These insights are valuable for improving outreach to low-income communities and improving access to this technology. When made available, induction stoves are a viable and welcome solution for air and housing quality issues that public housing and affordable housing residents face. We are thrilled to be joined by our partners today from Berkeley Air Monitoring, Columbia Mailman School of Public Health, and the Association for Energy Affordability, as well as a couple of participants for today's event. And before we hand it over to questions, we would like to show a short video highlighting our participants' experiences. Thank you so much.
Out of Gas in with Justice is a pilot program making a health-centered case for electrification in affordable housing.
This project began because New York is starting a pathway towards a massive decarbonization and electrification of our buildings. Buildings are the #1 source of greenhouse gas emissions, and greenhouse gas emissions is what's causing our climate crisis.
Our study monitored improvements to air quality in 20 apartments, 10 of which received induction stoves at the beginning of the pilot. The improvements that we measured were pretty remarkable.
We're really excited to find that the participants in this study have been happy with their new induction stoves, that they're cooking more efficiently, and they feel that they are safer for people long term.
Mi nombre es Ángela Norales. Antes de ese proyecto yo no sabía nada de la estufa.
My name is Ayana Kai Sutton. We cook everything with our stove. Chicken, seafood, rice. We love to bake cookies, cake, all that good stuff.
Mi nombre es María Legel. A mí me gusta cocinar de todo.
I'm Mary Rivera, and this is my daughter,
Franchelli Reyes.
We're in the Bronx, 1471 Watson Avenue.
What I like about it definitely probably has to be the fact that it's less pollution that comes out the stove. I have a 5-year-old son that lives with me, so anything that's gonna put us in good health, I'm all down for.
Eso es lo mejor que me ha salido en la vida, porque una vez me tuvieron que llevar a la emergencia porque tenía líquido del gas y me causó muchos problemas. Tuve que llevarme a la emergencia. So ahora estoy más segura con esa estufa eléctrica.
I definitely noticed the difference. I have asthma, and I didn't know that the gas stove was contributing to it, because like in the summer we didn't open the windows. And then I found out that the gas contribute to asthma and a lot of health risks. But now I have no cough, I have no, I don't feel congested like before.
Por muchos años atrás tenía mucho dolor en el pecho. He ido a muchos doctores, presbiterianos, a otros hospitales, y no me encuentran absolutamente nada. Y yo tengo poco tiempo en esta, y desde ese tiempo para acá, honestamente, no estoy sintiendo absolutamente nada de dolor en mi pecho. Quiere decir que había algo en el aire con la de gas, creo yo.
Cocina muy rápido y se mantiene limpio. El horno, el air fryer, es todo divino.
Se las recomiendo a todo el mundo. Es más, deberían de hacer de esas estufas eléctricas para todo el mundo y olvidarse de la de gas.
With my induction stove, it's never having the worry of you leaving the gas on, going to sleep with the gas on. It's a lot safer.
Once they get it, they won't regret it. Honestly.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the video. It's all the video. Most of you should have received an email from me earlier this morning with access to weact.org/OOG, where you can find a copy of that video, our press release, the report, some B-roll, and some images. With that, I'm going to open it up for questions. What's our first question, folks? Feel free to shout it out. Don't be shy.
What is the significance of this study on health? And
The significance of the study on health. Darby Jack from Columbia, would you be interested and willing? All right, come up. I may have to adjust the camera.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I would break the significance down into a couple of components. I think one component is what we've learned about the effects of gas stoves on indoor air quality. And I'd say this study really confirms what we already knew, which is that gas stoves are an important source of NO2, and switching from gas to electric reduces those indoor concentrations. And separately, we know from lots of research over many decades that NO2 is a harmful pollutant, primarily to folks with asthma. It exacerbates asthma. There's evidence that it can lead to new cases of asthma, but it's a respiratory irritant, and folks who are sensitive to respiratory irritants are going to be healthier in low NO2 environments. And then I'd say the second big piece of significance here is really the feasibility of these transitions in low-income housing. And I think we've learned from this, as Annie mentioned, from the focus groups, folks really like the stoves, and the barriers to this transition are economic and nothing else really.
Thank you, Darby. What else do we have, folks? Someone read me.
Did you get a chance to analyze, or will you also measure the effects that gas has on planet warming? And secondly, is this at all part of Biden's Justice 40 initiative for the PLCPA?
Sounds like a question for Sonal Jessel.
Thank you for your question. So along with measuring air quality, we know that gas use in homes is connected to the climate crisis. We know that fossil fuel use is the cause of global emissions, which is creating our climate crisis and impacting low-income communities and communities of color first and worst when it comes to extreme weather events and a lot of other impacts. Ultimately, we were researching the air quality component of the use of gas stoves because we believe as we're addressing fossil fuel use in homes as it relates to the climate crisis, it's important to continue to center the direct health impacts of these kinds of appliances on most impacted community members. And ultimately, the use of gas in homes is very much connected to the climate crisis, specifically in New York City, because we know that 70% of the buildings of greenhouse gas emissions in New York City come from buildings. And lastly, on the point of this question, you know that there's a lot of sources of air pollution in an area of the Bronx that we studied. And it's important that we're thinking about all sorts of different aspects of air quality and different sources of air pollution when it comes to addressing the climate crisis and addressing our public health crisis of air pollution, both in the home and out of the homes.
Thank you so much. Up next, I can't read the question. Could someone?
How complicated would it be to install this technology in NYCHA buildings?
Francis? Thank you, sir.
Hello, everyone. It's complicated. I mean, the technology that we have right now limits, what we can do and how we can upgrade the electrical system in the buildings. I mean, this stove require a 40 amp breaker to 08 voltage. So which is something that we don't have available in most of the apartments. I mean, most of these apartments only may have about 60 amps going to each one of the apartments. So getting 40 just for the stove is complicated. So it will require a complete electrical upgrade, at least until the technology, which we know is coming, it's at a point that will allow us to use a stove that will require a much lower voltage, like 110, which is what we normally have in the apartment. For now, the complication is that it will require full electrical upgrade of the building and also of the apartments, which will be time consuming and very costly.
Before you leave, introduce yourself, full name and everything.
My name is Francis Rodriguez. I'm the Weatherization Director for the Association for Energy Affordability. So we have been working with NYCHA in trying to do weatherization services in their buildings, many buildings in the city, but also now trying to electrify many of the usage that they have. This building in particular, we did a pilot with both heat pumps, but also with the stove. We have many buildings that we're working on, including some NYCHA buildings where we are doing electrification of both heating and in some other buildings also the cooking, including also induction stoves. So this study really has given us the insight to go and promote this, but also to be able to implement it into many of the buildings that we're doing weatherization on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. What's our next question, folks?
So a question from Roxanne Scott. Are there any future initiatives to study health effects of the low level CO poisoning related to gas stoves?
That's a great question. Who wants to field that? Darby Jack from Columbia, come on up.
Sure. So I think the first thing to say is this was a pilot study. This was a small study that was really designed to assess feasibility and not to make any novel measurements about health impacts of indoor air pollution. We know from lots of other research, again, that's been done over many decades, that carbon monoxide is a harmful pollutant. I don't know that we need to do more research to pin down those health effects. But I think what's really called for here is additional research to understand and really precisely quantify the indoor air quality benefits of gas-to-electric conversions in low-income housing. This was a really important first step, but I think we need studies that have much larger sample sizes. As you've heard, this involved 20 homes. I think what we need to do is do it with the same kind of careful air pollution monitoring, but in much larger sample sizes.
Thank you, Darby. And I believe someone asked a follow-up.
Yes. Is this at all part of Biden's Justice 40 initiative or the CLCPA? And how can we best characterize this initiative as part of the state or federal government's climate goals?
I'm going to bring back Sonal Jessen.
Thank you for your question. So just as a little bit of background, the state CLCPA is the Climate Leadership Community Protection Act. And this is the state's major climate bill that is working to achieve major emissions reductions across all industries by 2030, by 2050. There's a number of different points we have to hit. And what is a really important part of this legislation is that it specifically says 35 to 40% at a minimum of all benefits and investments of climate work has to go towards disadvantaged communities, which most of the time is really low-income communities and communities of color. The Justice 40 initiative is the federal initiative that's very similar, that is saying, 40% of funding is going to also these impacted communities. So the study that we've done is not directly in an effort to sort of work with the state or the federal government in terms of these goals. However, we do hope that this study contributes to informing how we can best deploy programs and funding to achieve those different goals, both through the Justice 40 and through the CLCPA's 35 to 40% initiative.
All right, thank you, Sonal. I believe we have another question queued up.
Yes. Can you tell me more about the controlled cook test?
The control, Annie, tell us about the control cook test.
So as I mentioned, a controlled cook test is a scientifically valid and repeatable protocol. And what we were finding is that through our long-term air monitoring, the other sources of nitrogen dioxide really made us kind of want to continue to do testing to be more comprehensive, but to also isolate the impacts of the stove on air quality. And so by running this controlled cook test, we cooked 18 meals of spaghetti, sauce, broccoli, and cookies under the controlling for the same conditions, same apartments, same weight of food, etc. The only difference was that we used a gas stove for half of those tests and induction stove for the other half. And we found that nitrogen dioxide in apartments with gas stoves was 190% higher when cooking this standardized meal, which is significant when thinking about indoor air quality and health.
Thank you, Annie. What's up next, folks?
So we have a question about tenants. So is there any feedback from tenants that we are able to share on well-being, on comfort, on preference?
Yes, Carmen Hernandez, come on up here, introduce yourself and tell us what you think.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Reverend Carmen Hernandez. I'm the TA president of 1471-73 Watson Avenue. I want to acknowledge my VP is here and a few tenants are here for my development. So I'm very happy that we are here today to represent. When I saw WEAT, I was so excited because I was already connected with WEAT in Zoom, and because I do networking, I run the Chamber of Commerce as well. So when I saw them in my building, I was so excited because I felt a breath of fresh air. Because when you live in NYCHA development, we are low income. Especially when you're a disability person and you live in the fixed income, you're the last person that the city think of you. You're the last person, especially when we went through COVID, we're the last person that they thought of. So when WEAT came, I thought it was a life-saving boat, because especially when I'm asthmatic and you have all these conditions, and you guys came in, it was a life-saving, it saved our life. I feel I breathe better with the new stove. I feel like a little kid, like I said, it's like a candy. You give me a little lollipop and it's just so brand new. I was afraid to touch it for a week, I'll be honest, because I went around it, what I'm gonna do with it. My VP is excited. She was like crazy. She cooked quick doing it on Thanksgiving Day. So we are excited about it. The tenants are happy about it. So I'm so grateful for WEAT and the organization that took place. I advise all the tenants to not be afraid. Work with your TA president, welcome WEAT, welcome all these organizations that come into your development. Sometimes people are afraid of new change. And so we have 2 or 3 tenants because they're afraid of change. Don't be afraid of change, accept it, because this is gonna better your health. This is gonna better your community, your way of life, the way you live. We need to live healthy. And when God opened doors for you to have these organizations to come in to help you is a life-saving, because that is hard to find, especially when we're living on NYCHA development, when we are the last that they think of. So thank you, WEAT. We are grateful. We are testimony, and the videos you saw, those were my tenants, and we are so happy. And so that shows proof how happy they are. That speaks for itself. So thank you and God bless.
Thank you. Well, one last question, Carmen, before you leave. How's the food taste on induction stoves?
Yummy. Like Jane Carrey said, yummy.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Carmen. Right, Siobhan? All right.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Siobhan Marino. I live in apartment 6J. And ever since I have the new stove, it's been very amazing. It cooks very fast. And the reason why I like it really because my daughter's autistic. She's highly autistic. She's nonverbal. That stove is a safety. Like, because she touches a lot, she can't touch nothing. It's no buttons. She doesn't even know that it's even there. She thinks that it's just like something that mommy cooks on, but where's the buttons at? But it's very amazing and it cooks very fast. Meaning like I cooked 2 turkeys on Thanksgiving. And I don't know how I did it, but it cooked really fast. The stove before would not even cook 2 turkeys within that. That stove is amazing. And it cooks really quick, like it cooks quick, and I don't see a lot of smoke. I don't see a lot of smoke coming out of it when you cook, and it's easy cleaning. That's what I love it. It's easy cleaning and it's black and it just looks nice. That's like my best friend, but I'm hoping when I move, I can bring it with me because that's the main safety purpose I'm having, because all housing doesn't have those stoves. And I really, I spoke to Annie about it. I'm like, Annie, please let me take that stove with me because I so need it, especially for my daughter. So, and for me, because sometimes I get tired of cooking every day. And if I want to cook something quick, I can use the oven because it's the air fryer. So it's really convenient. So I love it. I feel like everybody should get it though, but I guess our building is the lucky ones. So, yeah. And I love the videos. Annie, Michelle, whoever, the boss, you guys did great. I wish I did my video, but I have cats and Annie and Michelle knows that they be all over the place, so no. But I recommend everyone to have that stove for the future for all housing development throughout the 5 boroughs. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Yvonne. Okay, thanks. Cooking with Justice. All right, I think that concludes our press conference today. I thank everyone for attending. For all the reporters online, I'll be sending follow-up information. And you all should have my email. Thank you very much and have a great rest of your day.